The grass lay heavy with the weight of a long summer day, bending gently in the evening breeze. Hidden within its shelter, a young deer struggled to remain still. Its flank bore the sharp trace of injury, a raw line carved across its side, where a stumble or a predator's brief strike had left more than just pain. Breathing shallow, the deer pressed itself low to the ground, its ears twitching at the smallest movement. Body locked in the fragile balance between rest and fear. Not far from it, an abandoned dog lingered in restless silence. Thin and rough-coated, the animal carried the marks of weeks alone, ribs faintly showing, paws hardened from wandering roads and fields. Yet hunger was not what kept it rooted here. Its eyes moved constantly back to the deer, forward to the swaying grass, then again to the trembling form that refused to rise. Every few moments, the dog shifted its weight, circling a few cautious steps before lying down once more, as though unwilling to leave but uncertain of what its presence truly meant. The air grew cooler as the light began to fade, the colors of the day softening into shadow. Insects hummed low in the grass, wings brushing dry stems. Somewhere in the distance, a dove called, its note carrying across the quiet valley. But here, in this patch of stillness, every sound felt sharper. The deer's quick breaths lifted its narrow chest, then stilled again, as though pausing to test whether the world beyond the grass had noticed its weakness. The dog's nose twitched at the scent of dried blood, head lowering closer to the ground. It gave a low, uncertain whine, a sound swallowed quickly as though instinct told it not to draw attention. Yet even in that small sound, something protective stirred. Each time the deer shuddered, the dog's ears pricked forward, body tense but unwilling to move too close. The space between them carried a fragile understanding, one too weak to flee, the other too lost to turn away. From a nearby path, a pair of villagers passed, their voices faint as they spoke of returning before nightfall. The dog's head lifted sharply, ears forward, but it did not bark. It simply stood, body angled between the deer and the sound, tail low, waiting. When the footsteps faded into the distance, it sank back into the grass, letting the shadows fold around them both once again. The deer stirred, attempting to rise, legs trembling beneath its weight. For a few fragile seconds, it managed to lift itself, ears flicking and eyes wide. But pain cut the effort short, and the young body collapsed into the grass once more, a soft exhale breaking the silence. The dog stood quickly, pacing a tight circle, its nails clicking against hidden stones. It gave another soft whine, leaning forward as though to nudge but stopping just short. The deer's flank rose and fell, shallow but steady. The grass around them swayed like a restless sea, bending under the soft push of the evening wind. Shadows lengthened, stretching across the ground, while the first cool notes of night gathered in the air. Neither animal moved far, though both were bound by instinct to do so, one to flee, the other to search. Instead, they remained together, caught in the quiet pause between injury and survival, danger and safety. The dog lay down once more, head resting just above its paws, eyes never leaving the deer. In the dimming light, their shapes blurred into the grass, one trembling, one keeping watch. The silence between them held a fragile promise. Unspoken but felt, a bond born not of choice, but of need. The air grew heavier as the sun slipped beyond the ridge, leaving only the faintest glow at the horizon. Darkness crept in, slow at first, then certain, settling into the folds of grass and along the edges of the trees. The young deer remained low, its thin legs drawn beneath its body, eyes half closed with fatigue. Each breath was shallow, and when a shiver passed through its frame, the movement stirred the grass around it like ripples on water. The dog had not rested. Its ears shifted with every sound, nose lifting to test the air. It stood often, moving only a few steps before lowering itself again, but never beyond reach of the wounded creature it seemed bound to. As the silence of dusk gave way to the subtle noise of night, the dog's posture grew sharper. Its hackles lifted slightly, tail lowered, as though a shadow had entered the grass that only it could sense. The first sign came as a rustle on the far edge of the clearing. It was faint, easily dismissed as wind, but the dog's head turned sharply, body tense, gaze locked. A moment later, another sound followed, closer this time. The dog gave a low growl, almost inaudible, but deep enough to carry through the stems. The deer lifted its head in alarm, ears flicking, eyes wide. It tried to rise, but faltered, legs trembling, its body too weak to push away from the earth. It sank back down, chest heaving with the effort. Beyond the grass, the watchers drew nearer. Small eyes glinted briefly in the fading light, then disappeared again. Jackals moved with patience, circling wide, their lean bodies slipping between trees and shadows. Their pace was slow, deliberate, as though measuring the risk of this small clearing. They knew the scent of blood, and the deer's weakness was written clearly in its shallow breath and trembling body. The dog stepped forward, a barrier formed by nothing but its own body. It barked once, sharp and forceful, then again louder. The sound cut through the hush of night, scattering insects into the air. The deer flinched at the noise, but when it saw the dog stand firm, its trembling slowed, if only for a moment. The dog did not chase blindly into the dark, but held its ground, gaze shifting between the shadows where movement stirred. The jackals paused, their shapes lingering at the edge of vision. Their patience was long, but the dog's defiance unsettled them. They circled wider, seeking a path that did not meet the flash of teeth and bark. For every step they took, the dog answered with another growl, a warning carried in its stance. It darted forward once, lunging a few strides into the grass, then returned quickly to its post near the deer. Night pressed heavier now, and with it came the chorus of the wild. Frogs called from the damp earth, owls stirred from branches, and the wind shifted cool across the field. Yet beneath it all, tension stretched thin. The deer lay motionless except for the rise and fall of its chest. The dog stood above it, restless but steady, pacing short lines that always returned to the same point. From the distance, a faint sound of human life drifted, a door closing, a faint voice carried on the wind. The dog's ears flicked but did not waver. Its body remained turned toward the forest, eyes watching where the jackals lingered unseen. In the quiet between the rustles and calls, it gave a single soft whine, low and short, as though urging the deer to hold on. The deer's ear flicked once, its gaze lifting briefly to the dog before sinking back toward the earth. In the gathering dark, two fragile lives waited together, the wild pressing closer with every breath. The night deepened, and with it the pressure of the wild grew heavier around the clearing. The faint glow of twilight had long vanished, leaving the grass and trees cloaked in shifting shades of black. The young deer lay where it had fallen, its legs drawn close to its body, head resting low, ears twitching at every stir. Exhaustion held it still, yet its eyes remained wide, tracing the movements of the one creature that had not left its side. The dog moved ceaselessly, a restless guardian against the dark. Its paws pressed small paths into the ground as it circled, stopping often to listen. Each time the grass whispered with hidden movement, it froze. Shoulders braced, teeth just visible in the faint light. The tension in its frame told of instinct sharpened by survival, a stray hardened by nights of hunger and threat. Yet here, it was not its own safety it guarded. Its focus remained fixed on the trembling form lying helpless in the grass. At the edge of the field, eyes glimmered again, reflecting the faint shimmer of the half-risen moon. Jackals lingered, weaving in and out of the dark, never rushing but never leaving. Their patience pressed close, their steps cautious but sure. From time to time, a low call passed between them, short and sharp, the sound of coordination in the hunt. The dog answered with growls that cut the silence, then surged forward a few strides, chasing shadows it could not catch. Its bark rang out, startling the quiet of the night, but it returned always to its post, unwilling to leave the deer exposed. The deer trembled, muscles twitching though its body could not rise. It turned its head weakly, ears falling back against its skull. Its breath came quick and uneven, but still it did not attempt to flee. Perhaps it lacked the strength, or perhaps the steady presence nearby held it in place. Each time the dog lunged toward the dark and returned, the deer's shivering steadied for a moment, as though the fragile bond between them carried a measure of protection. The grass bent under the weight of the night wind, swaying in long, slow movements. The dog's coat lifted with the chill, Yet it did not rest. Its legs moved tirelessly, shoulders rippling as it paced short lines, then stopped again, ears straining to catch what the eye could not see. The jackals tested often, pushing a little closer, their shapes sliding low through the stems. Each time, the dog met them with sudden force, driving forward with a sharp bark, scattering them back into shadow. Its voice was rough and hoarse, carrying not bravado but urgency, a warning that it would not surrender its watch. Minutes stretched into hours. The deer shifted only slightly, rolling once onto its other side with effort, exposing the wound at its flank. The scent of blood stirred the air, carrying farther into the dark. The dog lowered its head to the ground, nose brushing the earth near the deer's shoulder, then lifted again, ears snapping back as another rustle came from the trees. It stepped forward quickly, chest low, tail stiff, then lunged with a harsh growl that broke the stillness. For a moment, the clearing held its breath. Then the grass at the edge stilled again, the hunters withdrawing. The dog returned slowly, paws pressing the earth in quiet rhythm, before settling once more between the deer and the dark line of trees. It stood tall for a moment, scanning the night, then lowered itself to the ground, chest against the soil, eyes still open. Its breathing was heavy but steady, carrying the weight of both exhaustion and resolve. The deer's sides lifted and fell in shallow rhythm, but its head leaned slightly toward the figure that held the line against the night. In the silence that followed, the dog gave a single low bark, softer this time, more measured, before resting its head briefly against its paws. The bond between them deepened in that stillness, a fragile trust formed not by choice, but by survival. The jackals lingered unseen in the dark, yet for this moment the deer was not alone. The dog's cries carried farther than the clearing, rising sharp against the stillness of night. Each bark echoed across the valley, startling owls into flight and rippling through the silence of sleeping fields. In the distance, human ears caught the sound. Lanterns flickered awake in small homes, their glow spreading in the darkness, as quiet voices wondered what trouble might lurk beyond the village edge. Two men stepped out into the night, carrying light that swayed gently with each movement. Their pace was cautious, for the woods after dusk held both secrets and dangers. Yet the persistent sound of the dog's warning pulled them forward, guiding their steps through narrow paths lined with whispering grass. With every cry, the direction grew clearer, until the glow of their lanterns touched the edge of the field. The dog stood rigid when it saw them, body tense, tail low, its voice breaking the dark with one last sharp bark. The men slowed, lowering their lanterns so the light spread softly across the grass. In its glow, the shape of the young deer emerged, frail, trembling, its body pressed against the earth. The wound along its side was clear now, a raw reminder of its struggle. One of the men drew in a quiet breath, murmuring low, "Easy now. Steady." His tone was soft, less for his companion than for the fearful eyes that stared back from the grass. The dog did not move away. It held its ground between the men and the deer, ears pinned back, body stiff with warning. Only when the men stopped a few paces short, keeping their voices low, did the dog lower its growl to a faint rumble. Its eyes never left them, flicking from face to lantern to the deer behind, as though weighing whether these figures of light were a threat or a relief. Around them, the forest shifted uneasily. The jackals lingered at the far edge, their patience stretched thin by the sudden arrival of humans. Their eyes shone briefly in the lantern light, then disappeared as they slipped deeper into shadow. The dog gave one more bark in their direction, a final chase of sound that scattered them into the trees. The night grew quieter, save for the soft rhythm of crickets and the labored breathing of the wounded deer. The men set their lanterns low, resting them in the grass so the light spread warmly without glare. They knelt slowly, keeping their movements measured, respectful of both the deer's fear and the dog's watchful presence. One of them drew a cloth from his pack, dampening it with water carried in a small flask. The other extended his hand just slightly toward the dog, palm down, letting it scent the air without pressure. The dog stiffened, but it did not lunge. Its body shook with tension, yet its paws remained planted, a decision made to stay rather than strike. With patient hands, the men pressed the cloth gently against the deer's flank. The animal flinched, legs kicking weakly, but the cloth stayed steady, soaking the blood that clung to its side. The man whispered softly, "It's all right. Almost there." His words were no more than a murmur, carried on a calm breath, as much for the dog's ears as for the deer's trembling form. Bit by bit, the bleeding slowed, though the wound still gaped raw. The dog circled once, restless, then settled again at the deer's head, its body angled protectively even as the men worked. It lowered its nose close to the deer's shoulder, as though offering a silent anchor while unfamiliar hands tended the wound. The deer, though shuddering, did not try to rise. Its chest rose and fell in uneven rhythm, yet its eyes softened in the glow of the lanterns, catching the flicker of both fear and fragile trust. When the cloth was set aside, the men withdrew with care, lifting their lanterns once more. The deer lay breathing, its wound cleaned and bound in the only way possible under such conditions. The dog lifted its head, eyes following the men, then turned back to the deer. The clearing held a new stillness, shaped not by threat, but by the quiet presence of both humans and the stray who had refused to abandon its watch. At first light, the edge of the forest was washed in pale silver, dew clinging to the grass like a thin veil of glass. The night had been long, filled with hushed movements and careful hands. Now, as the sky softened into the faint warmth of dawn, the young deer stirred where it had been resting. Its breathing, once ragged and uneven, had steadied into a rhythm of quiet strength. Muscles quivered beneath its fragile frame as it shifted, pressing trembling legs against the ground. Each motion seemed uncertain, as though the weight of the forest pressed against its limbs, asking if it was ready to return. The villagers stood in silence, their lanterns dimmed by the growing light. They made no sudden gesture, no sound beyond the gentle shuffle of feet in the grass. Their work through the night had been patient, cleaning the wound, wrapping it with soft strips of cloth, keeping the animal calm with whispered tones. Now they could only wait. The choice to rise belonged not to them but to the deer itself. The dog, who had never left its side, watched intently, ears forward, body low to the ground, a steady presence in the fragile moment. The deer pushed again, forelegs stretching, back legs sliding awkwardly before catching beneath its weight. It faltered, sinking halfway, then steadied. Its head lifted, ears twitching to the faint calls echoing deeper in the forest. A soft huff of air left its nostrils, as if the wild itself had answered. The villagers held their breath, afraid even the sound of human relief might break the fragile balance of courage and exhaustion. One of them whispered, barely above the sound of leaves, "Easy now." Nothing more. The dog edged closer, circling the deer's flank but keeping space, its movements careful. It made a low sound, not sharp but steady, as though urging the animal to keep standing. The deer, trembling from effort, finally managed to gather itself upright. Its legs shook, but they held. For the first time since the long night began, it stood beneath the trees, fragile but alive, wounded but still claimed by the wilderness. The villagers slowly stepped back, creating a clearing of space around the pair. With hesitant steps, the deer turned toward the forest. Its gait was uneven, but each stride grew more certain, more fluid. The rhythm of the wild seemed to return to its body with every motion. The dog did not move, only followed with its eyes, watching as the young creature crossed into the line of trees. When the deer paused briefly, glancing back with a tilt of its head, the dog's ears flicked in response. No sound passed between them, no gesture beyond stillness. Yet something unspoken lingered, a moment of recognition shaped only by survival and presence. The deer slipped deeper into the shadows of the forest, its figure dissolving between the trunks and undergrowth. The sound of its steps grew faint until only the distant rustle of branches remained. The dog stood a while longer, its chest rising and falling in slow measure, then lowered itself onto the damp earth. The villagers, weary from the night, turned toward their homes, their part in the story complete. They left the dog where it sat, knowing some creatures do not belong within fences or walls, When the last of the people had gone, the dog rose once more. It lingered at the edge of the clearing, gaze fixed on the horizon where the forest gave way to open fields. For a brief moment, it stood in stillness, as if torn between two worlds that offered no certainty. Then, with steady, unhurried steps, it moved away from the place where night had carried its cry. The grass bent beneath its paws, dew breaking against its fur, and the morning swallowed it into silence. The clearing grew quiet again. Only the soft wind moved through the trees, carrying the scent of earth and new light across the empty field. The forest closed in gently, as if nothing had happened at all,